Well, since you raised it, we'll start with a question about the wage gap. So currently in the U.S., a woman makes on average 79 cents for every dollar the man makes. Now, that's the average. That's the average.
It's not even the average.
See, the interesting thing is that pay is close to equal right after you graduate from college among college-educated men and women. That gap widens when men and women hit their mid-30s, which is when people start having kids. So how should we think about this wage gap? Should we put it down to personal choices, or does sex discrimination play a role? Let's give it to you, Julie.
I mean, I have to say, I find the whole discussion about the pay gap so boring. Not because I don't care. As I say, I care about women at the bottom. I do not care about the glass ceiling. But when you hear Milo argue this point, he'll talk about women working different hours, and he'll talk about the glorious joy of motherhood and how it's the most important thing a woman can do.
You've looked me up on YouTube.
Did I fucking wake up in the 1950s? Right? No, we were on the same program and I was in the green room and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. Now, of course, I'm not going to use any statistics tonight because everybody can come back and make up their own research, which Milo does on a regular basis. But you say, Milo, that there is no credible economist who has ever taken seriously the issue of a pay gap. And you also say, don't you, that because women are in different jobs, it's not comparing like with like, that women work different hours because they choose different lifestyles, they want to be home with their family. That whole shite. Now, the Harvard Labour economist, Claudia Goldin, who is very credible, she's not a lunatic, and she's not particularly enamoured with feminism. She found that the pay gap is wider in the same highest playing field, okay? So, for example, female finance specialists, judges and lawyers make between, respectively, 66% and 82% of their male counterparts in those roles, okay? And this is all controlling for age, race, hours and education. Women are also treated extremely harshly if they ask for a pay rise. So again, all this shtick that it's just not really, you know, in women's kind of makeup, because we're all soft bunnies that just want to cuddle puppies all the time.
I don't think anybody thinks that about you.
And not go. I know, I'm someone who kickstarts her own vibrator, trust me. If I was so unfeminist as to own one, which of course I am not. Of course, women asking for a pay rise, and some of you in here will have been in work situations where you're aware that your male boss is a little bit favouring of your male colleagues. He might be a bit lecturous. He might just be a bit of an arsehole. And women are punished and are treated very harshly for asking directly, assertively, for a pay rise. So all of these issues have to come into it. Now, like I say, it's really not my topic. Milo will now probably tell you a load of utter lies. If he cites any study at all, write it down, look it up.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. Good. It doesn't surprise me to hear a lesbian sceptical about family values. Since after their relationships start, you know, lesbian bed death sets in, you know, there's barely, I mean, look, what you have to understand about the wage gap is that it doesn't, first of all, it doesn't exist. It's based on a misunderstanding between wages and earnings. These are two different words in the dictionary. If you want to look something up, look that up. If you take all of the money that women earn and all of the money that men earn and you do a simple division, yes, you will find that the numbers are different. And that's because women make different life choices. If, however, you start to drill down to pay, you discover that if there is a wage gap at all, it is in favour not of men, but of women under the age of 30, at least in America. You also discover that when you control for women's different life choices, For instance, women tend not to graduate in engineering, and nobody is holding them back from applying for computer science or engineering or physics or any of those subjects. If you believe that there is a patriarchal conspiracy to keep women out of those subjects, you have to explain why there isn't one in veterinary science and biology, where women dominate. You discover that women make different life choices, and sometimes there are uncomfortable and unpopular truths that you have to factor in as an economist to this stuff. Women don't work as hard. Now, that's an unpopular thing to say, but they don't work the same hours as men. They take longer holidays, whether or not they've had babies. And, of course, they have children. And I, as a compassionate person, don't mind building in some things into the tax system and into the way the government works to accommodate that and to reward women for doing, for performing the essential function of our species. But that doesn't mean that private sector employers should pay them when they're not working. Now, to address the point very specifically, you cannot pay a woman and a man differently for doing the same job. That's against the law, and it doesn't happen. There are some cases in which women don't put in the hours it takes to make partner. And when you get to those higher professions, which Julie says she doesn't care about, but she will invoke to win an argument, when you get to those higher levels of employment, sometimes women just don't want to do the 80-hour weeks that men do. Now, part of that is probably biologically rooted. Julie doesn't like biological arguments, but there is very clear evidence that, from the evidence of our bodies, but also brain science, that men and women are different in quite significant cognitive ways. But there's also evidence that even in the most enlightened and equal societies, women stubbornly refuse to make the choices that feminists would like them to. For instance, if you look into emerging economies, you discover that the split between men and women in subjects that lead to very high-paying jobs, whether it's physics or computer science or maths, it's pretty equal in many cases, because those women don't have much of a choice but to just do it, get on with it, and make a living. When you look at societies that are famed for their feminist credentials, that are the most equal places in the world, Sweden, Norway, the West generally, frankly, you discover that a gap opens up, and women stop choosing to do certain subjects when they have the full range of options available to them. And what you discover is something counterintuitive, and it's that when women are more free to make decisions, when women have more options available to them, more money, and better access to the institutions, to education, to the workplace, and they have great access to the workplace. They have better access to the workplace than many men. 2015 Cornell study, yeah, you can look it up, shows that women have a 2-to-1 advantage over men going for jobs, academic jobs in the STEM field. Please do look it up. You discover that women just won't make the choices feminists would like them to. And they don't make those choices because, yeah, unlike radical lesbian feminists, some women want a family and children.